Hi, I'm Dr. Craig Gilbert, Director of Music here at the church, and this is the first video in our Lenten instruction series. And today we're going to deal with worshiping on purpose and worship His Majesty, which is the first step and the name of the first sermon. So let's talk about worshiping on purpose real quick. What is worshiping on purpose? Well, let me give you an example of something that might happen to you in real life. You get tickets to a ball game and you invite your friends, you go to the game, and as you're at the game, you spend time looking at the fans, you go and get a hot dog, you go and get a drink, maybe you're waiting on a foul ball, you go and buy a baseball cap, and you have a really great experience. Then you go home and you get back in your car to drive home, you turn on the radio and the announcement comes on and says, "The greatest game in the history of our team was played today," and you realize you missed it, and you were in the stands. But you were so busy with all the other stuff that went on with it that you completely missed the game. Well, that's what worshiping on purpose is like. We can come to church and completely miss the object of worship and the intention of worship, which is God and our relationship with God. You know, Jesus gave an example that happened just the same kind of thing. Do you remember the story of the bridesmaids and the oil? We had those who were there on purpose. They had made preparations. They had their focus on the prize. They knew what was going to happen. They were waiting on the king. And then you had the ones who came and they hadn't quite done such a good job of preparing to do something on purpose. And while they were busy doing something completely different, they missed the king. So don't miss the king when you come to worship. Make sure that we're worshiping on purpose and we're focusing on building our relationship with God. Now, another way to worship on purpose is to understand worship better. And that's what this worship series is really about. And this first sermon title, Worshiping the King, Worship His Majesty, there's a portion of the worship service that's set aside to recognize that God is God and we aren't. And that's the very beginning of the worship service. You know, beginning to come into the worship service and knowing that you want to do it on purpose and then seeing that you are there to meet the King. You know, if you were invited to the president's, the Oval Office to meet the president, would you walk into the Oval Office and immediately shake the president's hand and say, "You know what, you could do things a whole lot better and I really need the government to do this"? No. You would take time to recognize the president. You would be honored that you'd been invited to the Oval Office to meet the president in the first place. Even if things weren't really going great for you, there's something about meeting that world leader or meeting somebody really important that you want to give them honor and credit and due for who they are. Worship with God is no different. When we walk into worship, we have to remember this is God that has invited us. This is God's house that we're in. What an awesome experience and an awesome opportunity. And we should take time to really set our minds in that mode and realize that God Himself has invited us into His house to meet with Him. So why not spend some time putting yourself in that frame of mind and really opening yourself up? Our worship service is designed to reflect that. The call to worship, the opening hymn, the greeting time, all of these are crafted to remind us who God is and what God has done. Because before we can work on our story, we have to remind ourselves of God's story. Because it's God that's most important. You know, if you remember, Moses was walking along and the burning bush drew him to God. It was God's invitation through the burning bush. It was about God. Mary was just minding her own business and the angel of the Lord came to Mary and began the conversation. It's about God, not us. So as you're going through your week and as you're preparing for worship, do two things for me. One, decide that you're going to come to worship and you're going to worship on purpose. You're going to focus on God. That doesn't mean that we ignore everybody around us. It means that we try to all do this together and we really focus on that relationship with God. And then two, as the worship service starts over the next couple of weeks, remind yourself, hey, this is about God. And it's about me and God and us and God. It's not about me. It's not about what I want. It's about what God wants for me, which is not the same thing. So as you worship on purpose and build your relationship with God, and we remember that God is God and we aren't, I believe that our worship experience will begin to take that turn into something that is deeper and more meaningful in the time that we spend. So I hope that helps you. Look forward to seeing you on our next video. Thanks.